had a lady the other day that stopped me on the train, and she said, "I've got to say, I love your outfit. It's wonderful." I was in a chalk stripe suit. Every time I wear it, I get stopped every time. And she said, "What? Why are you wearing it?" And I said, "Well, my job." She said, "What do you do?" And I said, "I'm a tailor." And she sort of like looked up and she said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, I make suits." And she said, "Oh, what a nice hobby."
Bitch.
She's like, "I just didn't
Bitch.
understand. That's in my profession, but thanks."
I mean, it
um,
still surprises people, though, doesn't it? This picture
yeah.
of Savile Row being
Mm,
men in chalk
mm,
stripes,
yeah,
measuring other men in chalk stripes. And then
yeah,
I imagine when you walk in, that shakes up the image a bit.
absolutely. I mean, it has evolved. It has evolved. I've been tailoring for the last probably 15, 20 years. And when I first started, it definitely did raise some eyebrows. Um, some men were
And they have
very
this
surprised.
reputation of all being like 100 years old, don't they?
Absolutely. At the time, I was in my 30s. And yeah, I looked
So
very
you've only been
young.
doing it a couple of years then?
Just a couple. And yes, very, yeah, people were very surprised. And back then, it was mostly menswear. I mean, now I would say the split's probably 70% menswear, 30% women's wear. It's still not, 50-50.
Did you do it? Why did you become a tailor?
I actually started off in wedding gowns. So
Did
work,
you?
I used to manage five wedding gown shops, and I used to be a buyer and a fitter for a wedding gown company. And then something came up managing some menswear tailoring brands. And now look at me.
You
Yeah.
know, it's funny though because I think what amuses me is how many people think it's so terrifyingly expensive when actually, when you think about it, a made-to-measure suit can sometimes be cheaper than something straight off Bond Street with a designer label, can't it? I mean, people I don't think genuinely know that.
No, I mean, very often if I'm having a consultation, will go through. I'm quite transparent with pricing from the start because people need to know. There's no point in having a whole, consultation and hit with a big price at the end or whatever it might be. And
Mm,
more often than not, they will say to me, "Oh gosh, that's reasonable. I thought it was going to be a lot more than that."
yeah,
And yes, definitely, you go down Bond Street and you buy yourself a, Chanel jacket, for example, upwards of £7,000. That's gonna,
right.
that will get you at least 2 to 3 jackets, made to measure or bespoke. So, uh, and that's made for
Which
you.
is wild when you think about it, isn't it?
Completely
You
wild.
know? So why? Like, why do I know the psychology behind it, but why is it that we have this idea of Savile Row? It's almost like the culture of Savile Row itself, isn't it? Like Savile Row isn't famous for being incredibly welcoming, and I imagine when you first arrived, there was a few eyebrows raised. I mean, and a lot of people get hugely nervous when they think of Savile Row. Most people think they can't afford it. Other people think that it's not for me. They've got this idea in their head that only a certain type of person goes. Has that changed?
It is changing. I think having a conversation pre to meeting someone is really important because by that point you've formed a relationship and you've discussed pricing to some extent. And so, it's different if you're just walking down Savile Row, you're swinging open a door and walking in. Obviously, they haven't had that. Um, uh, but if you had a conversation with someone before you've met them and before you've, had a consultation with them, then you're already at ease. You're already finding out what they're looking for, what their needs are, and transparency is really important. No, but whether you're buying a car or a kitchen, everybody has a budget generally, and it's
And this is it, isn't it? Everybody, you hear people say, "Oh, I don't have a budget." Nonsense. Everybody has a budget. The fact that you don't want to tell me is stupid, but you do you.
yeah,
So, I mean, your clients must be endlessly entertaining, though, because you're going to have, like, really serious types who want to look like cabinet ministers, and then you've got others who just want to make sure that their trousers don't cut off their circulation, like this post you did on LinkedIn where the trousers were swinging around the ankle. Do you find that women ask for different things to men, or is it really just down to personality?
It's down to personality, definitely. But I think men are a bit more classic in their approach, especially our client base.
Or,
A lot of guys still wearing suits. It's sort of legal profession, it's finance. If they're not in a quarter zip and a gilet, if I can get them away from that,
yeah,
that's fantastic.
yeah, yeah.
But men tend to be a bit more classic because it does take a fair amount of thought process in the morning to sort of try and piece bits together. So where possible, we actually try and create wardrobes for clients to make that easier. If you're getting up at 5, 6 in the morning, you don't want to be opening the wardrobe, staring at it, thinking,
Right.
"Oh, what goes with what? I've no idea." So we try and make it easy for them.
So
But I
like a
think
capsule wardrobe kind of thing?
absolutely, I think women do experiment a bit more, and women like more choice, whereas men actually would prefer. The way I see it is men shop once or twice a year and they spend a lot more money, whereas women like to shop every weekend. So
Right, okay.
in that respect, they like to experiment more, definitely. But it's personality. I've got clients that do want trousers halfway up their legs, and they're the customer. That's their
No, I hope
prerogative.
you say no.
I mean, I try my best. I mean, on the whole, our clients are fantastic, and they come to us for advice, and they do listen to us, and they say, make me look fabulous, and we do. So
But that's the thing, isn't it? And I think the psychology behind it all is what fascinates me, obviously, because the suit can be armor for one person, and it can be a status marker for another, and and some of it is just about comfort, isn't it, and convenience. So I imagine you see all of these motivations in fittings.
absolutely. I mean, when I have the conversation with the client, I'm finding out, is it for work? Do they commute in it? Do they need to sit on a plane in it? Is it for drinking cocktails? Because the suit that you are wearing to an evening event for cocktails is very different to a suit you've got to sit 4 hours on a plane in. The fit's got to be different, the fabric's got to be different. So it's all about ascertaining the right lifestyle of that suit and finding the right cloths and cut for that.
I read something, one of your, either it was one of your articles or one of your posts or something, where you talked about the importance of the seat of the trousers.
Absolutely.
Tell me about that.
Well, if the trousers are too tight and you've got to sit on them, it's all going to go rising up. And it's all going to chafe. And, the seat of the trouser is actually really important because that's how, the seat of the trouser is what you're sitting on, and that gets the most. So, especially on men, trousers tend to go in the crotch or the bottom, depending on their shape. So that's got to fit really well. Your suit cannot be a second skin.
Fascinating, isn't it? Because it's not something you think about, is it? Really? When you're buying clothing. I know it's probably not something I think about. It's like patches on the knees and elbows, isn't it?
I had a
Not that
client.
I suggest you get patches on the knees and elbows.
I have a client who used to cycle, and he kept saying to me, I love your suits, but I keep wearing through the trousers. And I said, well, every time you come to me, you're on a Boris bike, so that's going to knacker your trousers. And he was really surprised. No, I didn't realise.
But it does make sense, I suppose, doesn't
Yeah,
it?
it does.
I suppose something that strikes me, Savile Row has always been a male bastion, almost, right?
Yeah,
I would say it's fair to say that you associate Savile Row with a very particular type of man. And I think what strikes me is how many women don't see Savile Row as an option. Whereas they'll happily buy Chanel jackets or Dior tailoring, but the idea of walking into a row house doesn't cross their mind. Why? So you're fabulously dressed in a suit, and every photograph I see of you is in a suit, except the post you did the other day where you destroyed that image completely with leggings and dogs and country and stuff like that.
never again.
Decimated the
Never
image of
again.
perfection. But my business partner, for example, finds it almost impossible to get good fitting suits. But it never crossed her mind to go to Savile Row. Why?
I think there's partly education, and a lot of women, like you say, it's not something they ever think about because it was so male dominated. It's not something that's sort of on their radar. And even when I meet wives and if they come in for a fitting with a husband or partner, and I say, oh, I do, ladies, and it's like a complete shock on their face, like they can't believe that that's a thing. And I say, well, look at what I'm wearing. This is tailored,
Right?
and then it really opens their eyes. There's a lot of that. I think because there have been a lot of men in tailoring in terms of doing the role itself, most women aren't comfortable meeting a man and having him measure all sorts of areas. It's a bit different.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, a woman measuring a man, it's not so intimate, but with women's measuring, you have to get a little bit more intimate. The fit over the bust is incredibly important, and most women are not going to feel particularly comfortable going in there when it's all male dominated and then being measured. And the other simple thing is there's a lot of, I can say, don't always understand a woman's shape as well because our shapes are so different. I mean, with men, you've got 4 or 5 different body shapes, slightly bigger chest, a bigger tummy, a big bum, or maybe if you're an athlete, you might have bigger thighs. You know, it doesn't get much more complicated than that, apart from maybe your shoulders are sloping. But with women, we are all over the place.
All over the place.
All
All
over
over
the
the
place.
place.
And no two women are the same. So trying to find a suit that fits, well, firstly off the peg is almost impossible because no woman is an off the peg shape, especially these days. Our body shapes are completely different. And so it's really about educating
Yeah.
women that it's attainable.
Yeah, and this is the thing. I mean, if you're going to spend 4 grand on a Chanel suit, which is very easy to do,
Absolutely.
would you not spend 2 or 3 on one that's made for you? Not only have you saved money, but you've got something that looks amazing. Do you think it's because of the? Do you think it's the label? Do you think it's the status? Do you think that plays a part in it?
Um, there is that. I think there is that, especially using the example of a Chanel jacket. I had a client a few years ago who had said to me, "Oh, I've seen a Chanel jacket that I love, and but I'm just simply not spending that amount. It was £6,000." So I said, "Okay." She said, "But I want that exact fabric. It has to be exactly the same." So I said, "Well,
Okay.
I do know where that fabric comes from." So I said, I can source the fabric. It's not going to be Chanel, obviously, but we can do a similar shape. And then the price at the time, I don't know, it came out maybe 3,000. It was maybe about half the price because the fabric it was a pattern that we didn't have that we had to create. So it was a bit more expensive than it probably would a normal jacket would be. And she
Yeah.
said, but I can buy it at Chanel for 6. So why is it still £3,000? I think she had the mentality that it was, a dressmaker was going to charge her 50 quid for it. I don't know. She had a very different mentality about it. But she definitely wanted it to look like a Chanel jacket. That was very much, the cachet.
Isn't
But
that's fascinating? And this is something I see in Asia, believe it or not, especially across the India and maybe Malaysia and stuff like that. The idea that you would go to a tailor to get things handmade is so second nature over there that it's not even something you talk about. In fact, it's more prestigious to go and buy off the rack in a shop like Marks and Spencer's or Zara than it is to go to the local tailor and have a damn suit handmade for you. Isn't that ludicrous?
yes, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. And of course, depending on your shape, Chanel doesn't cut for the most generous woman. So once you get over a size 12, which
No, you
actually is a much
have to be.
expensive size 8, then it's just not going to fit you. It's not. If you've got any sort of bust or you've got any sort of, tummy or anything, it's not going to fit you. So you're spending £7,000 on something that's going to fit you terribly. So, but I genuinely think it's education. A lot of women do not realise that it's available.
Yeah. So tell me this. Can you read someone the second they pick a swatch? So Navy Worsted says one thing and Laura Piana says another, or a bowl check says something else entirely. Does the cloth speak before they do?
Yes, yeah. It does. And again, for example, I've got quite a big check on today, which shows that I'm not, particularly shy, and I don't mind
Yes, you're not
taking.
exactly a shrinking violet now, Natalie, are you?
But some people do like to blend in. I mean, I've got one, lady barrister I've looked after for many years, and she orders 4 charcoal suits at once. And I say, can't
Okay.
maybe have a navy one in there? Just mix it up. No, 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 stuff in charcoal. So it is personality based, and I'm here to push the boundaries and kind of give them something a little, you know, with a bit more pizzazz. But it depends on what the suit's for. I find if it's for a wedding, they're often in for a bit more adventurous. If they're normally in a classic suit every day, then they normally go all out for a wedding suit. But often the client will be led by myself. This is what they're coming from. Oh.
But this is the thing. People, especially at the very upper end of the market, and I think this is a huge misconception, is that at the very upper end of the market, the client doesn't like making decisions because they're not used to it. They're used to being told what to do, where to go, when to be there. So when they go in for whatever it is, whether they're buying a suit or a appliance or a piece of technology, they actually want to be guided by an expert and told this is what's going to suit you, this is what's going to look best on you, and this is what we're going to do. And that makes them happy as Larry, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It's what they come to us for. I mean, sometimes, I've got 10, 15 minutes with a client and they simply don't have the time or even the inclination. It's a great experience, but to some, they're doing it all the time. It's really just a
Mhm.
case of let's just get this done. And every client, if I'm the same, I had to buy a car and I walked into the showroom and I said, I need to buy a car. I've got 10 minutes. And they just looked at me like I was insane. I said, no, I really have only got 10 minutes. Show me what you've got. And I said, I need to pick something. And they were very surprised. But when you time poor, that's how you do
Yeah,
things.
but
That's
this is
it.
it. You have to adapt the experience, don't you? I think sometimes we get confused within the luxury industry or the very upper end of the industry where we talk about the client experience. And sometimes the client experience is actually huge speed rather than dragging it out, you know?
Absolutely.
And I think we've started to equate experience with something that takes 45 minutes or 50 minutes, or an hour, whatever. I think as well with tailoring, an awful lot of what terrifies people is the jargon or the wording: ready to wear, made to measure, bespoke. It sounds complicated to the uninitiated, but I'm going to put you on the spot and I'm going to have you explain what they are.
Ready to wear or off the peg is the same thing. It's basically a garment
Right.
that's already made. You go into Reese, Boss, or wherever. It's got it in multiple sizes. It's put on, and then some little adjustments are made to fit the client. Most suits, any suit you buy, whether it's £100 or £1,000 or £5,000 off the peg, needs a little bit of adjustment to make it perfect. It makes such a difference. And then there's made to measure. So made to measure comes from a standard block. So for example, it's size 40 or 42. We're still making it for the client, individual to their styling and fabric requirements. It's just either a little bit wider in the shoulder or a bit longer or a bit shorter. Still a fantastic fit. Made to measure will fit probably about 70% of the population quite well, certainly if you're a man. A little bit harder for women. And then you've got the bespoke and bespoke handmade, where that's a unique pattern made and cut for the client itself. And that's, obviously.
So with made to measure, for example, you said it's cut off a size or cut off a pattern. Does that mean that it's not unique to that particular client? Is
It's
it just the same as ready to wear?
It's not the same as ready to wear because you can still make many more adjustments. On a ready to wear, you can't change the shoulders. So, for example, if,
Right.
if they buy if they're a 40 chest, but they might, I don't know, go to the gym and they might have big shoulders or a big back, there's nothing you
Right.
can do about
Yeah.
that. They might have to hop up a size and then have everything taken in. So it's much more advanced than the off the peg. But you've got three distinct levels, and depending on your budget and your body shape, will determine that essentially.
Let's talk about price for a moment because the when we look at ready to wear suits at the upper end of the market, I suppose we're talking at what 6 to 1,000, 1,200 pounds, something like
Yeah,
that.
roughly, yeah.
Where does it start for made to measure, and then where does it jump to with bespoke?
So we start from about 1,500 for a two-piece suit made to measure. So that's our starting point. An average is probably about 2,000. You know, absolutely
Right.
fine if you like the fabrics at that price range, but if you want something different, and largely on the bespoke will start from about 2,800, just to give you a rough ballpark. But it's
There
completely
isn't
down to
really
fabric.
that much of a
No,
difference
no,
between the two.
sometimes there isn't, again, it's down to the cloth itself as well. There's two components. There's the making of the garment, and there's the price of the cloth. Cloths vary wildly depending on what they're made from.
So actually, the jumps between maybe a designer suit, a made-to-measure suit, and a bespoke suit, well, you're not really leaping
No,
in huge increments, are you? I mean, yes, from off the peg to bespoke, that's a considerable jump. But if you take it in steps, it's not really
no,
that huge a jump. We're
it's not.
talking maybe £400 between off the peg and made to measure.
Indeed, it's not.
Interesting.
Yeah, and often when I have that conversation with clients who maybe are new to tailoring or new to made to measure or bespoke, they're quite surprised. They're expecting it to be much, much higher. Um,
Mm. Then, of course, you're getting a lot more choice, aren't you? Now,
oh,
you
again,
must see generational differences as well. You know, the younger ones, the less patient ones, those who are happy to play around with fabric and cuts and stuff like that. The older guard, though, do they still cling to navy and grey? Sometimes I feel that actually the older generation are more adventurous than the younger generation in many regards. What do
they
you
can
think?
they can be. I mean, you certainly don't sell many red chinos to 25-year-olds, but I sell quite a lot of those to people in 60 plus. And sometimes, like tweeds, for example, tweeds, the older generation
Oh,
love
I love
tweeds.
a tweed.
Whereas sometimes trying to get the younger generation into a tweed probably takes a little bit of getting there. It has to be kind of plain. They're afraid of checks. I mean, eventually, that's the thing. At an entry point, a new client isn't adventurous. They're not with their cloth choice. They're not with their lining choice. But as things evolve, they get more adventurous. I myself, my first suit was navy. My second one was a houndstooth, and now I've got all sorts. I've got bright orange and God knows what. But it definitely evolves. I think, and also I think there's a culture where they don't like to stand out too much, especially starting off in maybe business or social circles. They can be quite awkward, the younger generation, and they don't want to stand out, and they don't, so they're often being quite safe. So, as you say, sometimes the older generations just love a bit of colour or some design.
Yeah, I mean, it comes down to trust as well, though, doesn't it? Whether they trust you or not, so it comes down to that. I'm assuming that fittings can be quite amusing, kind of half comedy, half therapy. I presume you have some people cracking jokes in underwear. Although, having said that, you don't really get down to your underwear anymore, do you? That's the thing of the part. I remember getting suits made when I was younger, and you were essentially almost naked with the tailor. But that has changed. But so you must have stories that, make you laugh. Tell me something fantastically salacious.
I mean, I have had somebody who got completely undressed once. I'd asked him to put some. I think there was another tailor in the room. It was a big wedding party, and I said, "Oh, can you pop the trousers?" It had been made, and I said, "Can you pop the trousers?" And he was taking I mean, like an age to get ready. And myself and the other tailor were looking at each other as if to say, "What's going on here?" Anyway, I said, "Is everything okay?" Didn't reply, and then long and short of it, the curtain was open, so I sort of slipped past, as he'd fallen on the floor. He was just standing there completely naked. Excuse me, I said, you put your trousers on. And I said, oh, I thought you were going to, I mean, genuinely he said, I thought you were going to help me. I thought, can you not, you're an adult, can you not put your own trousers on? But um, fortunately, most of the time I'm shielded from anything like that. I have had a chap that turned up once who said, oh, would you mind if I filmed the appointment? So I thought, no, that's okay. Sometimes people do that so they can see the suit and the rest of it, have a look at it when they
Yeah.
go home. I'd never really been asked, but I figured it was. And then he said, oh, it's because my wife thinks I'm having an affair, so I need to prove where I am. Of course, didn't
Oh
make it
Lord.
awkward at all.
No, not at all. Yes, of course, by all means, film. How many fittings do you need to have to get a suit made? Like, is it? A lot of people think it's a long, laborious process, don't they?
They're no, 2 to 3 in total. If you need more than
Go
that,
on.
then something's gone wrong. you know,
Yeah, because
so it's not, yeah.
I think this is what people need to hear as well, though. And I think this also terrifies people. They have this idea in their head that it's 10, 15, and that it takes so many different measurements and so many different visits to get it done, and it's a long, laborious process. But it's actually not. 2 or 3 fittings, a little bit of patience because it isn't ready overnight. It does take a while, doesn't it? What's the average? About 6 weeks, that kind of
We
time
we
frame.
we quote about 8 weeks in total. I mean, it takes over sort of 80 to 90 hours actually to make a suit. But of course, you're not
Yeah.
doing it continuously, and we've got more than one client.
Yeah,
So,
right.
um,
Okay.
um, with the made to measure, usually the garment's finished through before the client will try it on, and they'll have a fitting right at the very end. So you might have a tweak then. But with the bespoke, normally after about 4 weeks, they will try on the basted 12. So that's really when most
Right.
of the adjustments are made. And normally, when it's finished through, it's good to go. I mean, if
Yeah.
you've got 10 appointments, there's something not right with your suit.
Well, right. Exactly. But the thing is, though, if you do have this little bit of pain, because we live in an era where we don't like to wait for stuff. So 8 weeks does require a bit of patience to go from order to receipt. That's even longer than Timo and Alibaba. But suddenly you've got. But suddenly, though, if you do have that bit of patience, you've got something that makes you feel, I suppose, like yourself in a way that nothing else does. And that's kind of the real luxury about the whole thing, isn't it?
It does make you feel wonderful, and it is worth waiting for. It's completely different. And I've got new, especially what's lovely is when you have a new client that's not been used to bespoke or made to measure, and the look on their face when they first see themselves with something that fit, it's unreal. You can't really buy it. I mean, I love that feeling, and that's why I do it because I'm not faced generally with everyday, ordinary shaped individuals all the time. Sometimes I have clients that, you know, just cannot find something to fit. I had a client who had many suits and then just never getting the right fit. And then he had his first fit, it wasn't even finished through. And he cried when he put on the basted 12. He actually cried.
That's incredible because you just see that the confidence shine through, don't you? And I think that's a really lovely thing.
And it doesn't have to be a really showy suit, it could just be something really classic, but the way it makes somebody feel and the confidence it gives them. When I talk about my chalk stripe suit, every time I wear it, I get a compliment. Every time. And it's lovely, it makes you feel great.
Yeah, of course it does. We all love a compliment. We all love to be told that we're absolutely fabulous, don't we?